Welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. We are doing a webinar taking a look at the report wizard and custom reporting features inside RoomKey. So let's get started with our presentation. So the outline for today's presentation will start with some introductions. Then we will define what is the rate wizard, where you can find it, how you can access it, and who has access to it. Then we'll take a look at how to create different types of reports in the report wizard. Those are reports based on reservations and based on transactions. We'll also take some time to review some report wizard frequently asked questions or FAQ that we get often from the support team and training. And then we'll also discuss when you can start using this tool inside your RoomKey database. We'll wrap up today's presentation with a bit of summary and Q&A. The end. So taking a look at our introductions for today, my name is Tasha LeClaire. I'm a trainer and implementation specialist with RoomKey. Joining me today, I do have our Director of Customer Experience, Mr. William Tam. Now, I'll be leading today's presentation and the demonstrations on screen, and William will oversee the chat and Q&A. Everyone in today's presentation is on mute, but if you do want to ask a question at any time, go ahead and click that Q&A button in the Zoom webinar meeting. You can type out your question. William will be able to answer, and if there's any questions left over, we can include those in the Q&A and summary at the end. Now, a couple more things about today's webinar. It is being recorded, and a copy of that recording will be made available on our support website within 24 hours. If you've registered for the presentation but are not able to stay for the entire presentation or not able to join at all, you will get a notification when that recording is made available on our support website. For those of you joining us for our live presentation, there is also a webinar survey at the end. Once you close the meeting or once the meeting closes, you'll be prompted with a few questions from our webinar survey. You can also use that survey questionnaire to request any future presentation topics. Great. So let's take a look at our first topic for today. We'll look at what is the report wizard, where we can find it. So this is a module that allows you to create custom reports based on either reservations data or transactional data inside RoomKey. So this is what the report wizard looks like. You have the ability to run reports, existing reports, you can create new reports, or you can modify any existing reports as well. Access to the report wizard is permission based. So in order to create or modify reports, you do need to have a property and a clerk permission, and that is permission 611 report wizard. That is found in the operations section of the permissions group. Now, if you have an owner admin user role, this permission is enabled for your user automatically. But if you have an accountant or clerk user role, you will have to add this manually in the clerks module, exemplified here. Now, this is access to the report wizard itself, the tool that allows you to create and manage these reports. But once you create reports, clerks will have access to these custom reports. So once you create reports in the report wizard, you will see them available in the custom report section of the reports menu. So when you click on reports, you'll see custom reports is a section at the bottom there. And in order to access the custom reports, you will have to select load custom reports first. Now you can control access to these custom reports based off of a clerk ID. So not all clerks need to have access to your custom reports. The access to this custom report section is controlled by a clerk permission. That is permission 1505 custom reports. And that Clerk permission is found in the reporting section of the permissions there. If you do have the owner admin user role, this permission is enabled by default for your user. But if you have a clerk or accountant user role, you will need to add this permission from the reporting section in order to access the custom reports that have been built in your database. Let's now take a look at how to build these reports using this report wizard tool. As I mentioned earlier, you can build custom reports on either reservation data or transaction data. We're going to take a look at these one at a time, and I'm going to start with how to create a custom report based on reservation data or based on reservations. These are reservations that are booked in the system. They could be for checked out or canceled reservations in the past, or they could be for future reservations or in-house reservations. So to create a custom report, we're going to follow these three main steps. Step one is to create the report and header for the report. Step two is to select the fields and add filters using those selected fields. And then step three is to customize the columns, the grouping, or the order features. And that's just more of an aesthetic step at the very end to make sure that the report is easy to read and accessible for your team. So I've got three short videos here that are going to take us through each of these steps using a example report. The report that we're going to create is going to show us Booking.com and Expedia.com arrival reservations. So let's take a look at how to create the report and that header information right off the bat. So you're going to click New, and in the Report tab, this is where you can add a name for your report. You can indicate that this report is based off of reservations, let you know that it's shown in the menu, and you can add a description for the report. You'll click the Next button, and this is where you can customize how the header looks on the finished report. So we add a title, and you can also add variables like the property name or address information. I recommend at least adding that property value there. So very basic step there to create the report and header information. Like I said, this report is going to be based off of reservations, so we do have to select that in our step number one. And it's going to be based off of specific types of reservations. So that's what we're going to look at selecting in our step number two. We're going to use the rate name field to select and filter out the specific reservations we want to look at. We're also going to select the arrival date field, and that allows us to create a filter based off of the arrival date. Um, the result is that we want to see future reservations by arrival date that have the Booking.com or Expedia.com rate plan associated. So we can see those arrivals coming up for future dates, or we can see when those reservations arrived in the past. Great. So our next video here is going to take us through those steps of selecting those filters that we want to display and use for, or sorry, selecting those fields we want to display on the report, and also the filters that we need, or sorry, the fields that we need for our filter. So to access the Fields tab, we'll click Next, and that brings us to a list of all these groups of fields that are available to select from. To select individual fields, you'll expand this list and you can scroll down to select the field you need and use the arrow button to move it over to the right-hand side. So that's going to allow us to pick out specific fields that we want to use or want to appear on our finished report. Here I've selected the reservation arrival date, the rate name, the rate pricing, the res ID for that reservation. We can also select guest-based information like the guest full name and move that over to our selected fields. Once you pull all of your information over, let's just pull over the status of the reservation here, you'll see them listed on the right-hand side. Now, we can click the Next button, And this now allows us to use those selected fields to build our filter. So you can see those in the report fields available on the left-hand side. I'm going to use the expression buttons in the middle to now build my filter. My first filter is to select the arrival date. So I'll click expression and I want the user to select a arrival date from. So I select greater than and then the parameter and use the prompt date from. And I want the user to also select a date to for that arrival date. So I want them to select a date range, date from, and date to. So this is where I can add that date to selection. And now I want to tell RoomKey to pull all reservations. So I'll select and I want to specify the reservation information. So this is going to be by rate name. The expression is going to be like booking.com or booking in this case. So I want RoomKey to pick out all of the reservations with a rate name that is like booking or with a rate name that is like Expedia. So I'll click expression, like, and the value here is now going to be Expedia and select OK. Now I want to close bracket that because it's an or statement. It could be one or the other. The last thing I want to add in is that I don't want to see any reservations that have been canceled. So I'm going to select and I'm going to use a bracket because I want to do a negative expression. So I'm going to select not and then the status. I want to make sure that the status is not canceled. So we'll make sure that the status is not equal to canceled and click OK. I'm just going to close bracket on the end of that expression to make sure that it is complete there. So that is a pretty complex filter, but I just wanted to use that one as an example because it does take you through a couple of different components. We have those prompts, the date from, the date to. So when I generate this report, the user is going to select a date from, date to, date range to see all arrivals within that date range. And then I've used an or statement so that RoomKey knows it's looking for any reservations with a rate name that is like booking.com or that is like Expedia. And I've also told RoomKey that I want to filter out. I do not want to see any reservations that are in canceled status. Great. So now the last step, step number 3, is to customize the look of the resulting report. And that allows us to customize the width and organization of columns. We can group the resulting data, and we can also designate an order or sort order for that data. So that's going to be here in step number 3. So to access the Columns tab from the filter, you're going to click Next. And this is where you'll see a list of all of those fields. Now to rearrange the fields, you can click on the field and use these up or down arrows to move that field up or down. In this case, I want to show the arrival departure date beside each other, and I also want to put the res ID and the guest full name at the very beginning. So those should be the first 2 columns there. The other thing that you can do with these columns is, of course, you can view all the available columns here. We can also choose formatting for specific types of data. For example, here with the arrival date, I can designate what format I want that arrival and departure dates to appear as. And you can also customize what that header states. By default, it will say arrival date, but if you just want it to be simplified to arrival and departure, you can use the title column here to designate those as such. Likewise, with the rate formatting, you can choose how you want that number to appear, and you can shorten some other titles here. So I'm just going to shorten credit card holder to CC name. Now, as you're going through and using the title and formatting for these columns, you can also designate the width. You can choose if a column appears or does not appear. You can remove the check mark from the column checkbox if you do not want that field to appear as a column on the resulting report. You can also choose to summarize or add up all of the values in something like a rate column there. Once you're done with customizing the columns, you'll click the Next button, and that now brings you over to the Group By tab, where you can choose how to group the resulting data. In this case, I'm going to group them by rate name. Click Next. And lastly, I'm going to order this resulting data by arrival date. So it's going to show arrival from most recent to furthest ahead, or by arrival date. And you can click Finish. Once you've finished creating your report, you will now see it available here. This one is simply called Booking.com and Expedia Arrivals. Great. So we've gone through and we've seen how to create a custom report based off of reservations following these 3 steps. I'm going to pull up a test database with that custom report, and show you how to access that now. Great. So as an admin owner user role, I can access the custom reports from the reports menu and go directly to the report wizard. If I am a user and I do not have access to the report wizard, just the custom reports, I'll be able to see or load my custom reports from this section here. Once you load your custom reports, you will now see them available to select in this custom reports section. So let's go ahead and take a look at what that custom report looks like for Booking.com and Expedia arrivals. You'll notice that it gives me a prompt in the top left-hand corner here. So this is going to prompt me to select my date range, starting with the date from. Let's start from today's date. And now it's going to prompt me to look for the date to, so the end of the date range. Let's look at arrivals through to the end of October. So we'll select October 31st and OK. Now that's going to generate a report for me. I'm just going to zoom in here to make it a little easier to see. So here's my resulting report. A couple of features that you'll notice is the name of the hotel and the report name appear on top. The other thing that is displayed on these custom reports is your filtering conditions. So I can see exactly how this filter was created. I can also see the parameters that I entered in. So the prompts here, the arrival date is from all reservations arriving between today's date and October 31st. Now, the resulting report, these are the columns and fields that I have customized. So I can see it's organized with or grouped by the rate name. Now, when you are first customizing this information, I do recommend you take a look at the resulting report just so in case you need to make any adjustments. One thing that I can see here that I might want to adjust is the column width for the rate name. You can see that it's a little bit cut off here, even though it's grouped. So I might want to adjust that width. The other thing I might want to adjust is the width for the CC name or credit card holder name and the status. Both of these are also cut off at the end. Another thing that you might want to note, in this particular report, we did create it and asked to have a sum for the rate column. On second thought, I think that that may not be applicable. Instead, what I might want to do is have a count of how many of these reservations are arriving for each one of these uh, rate plans. So I want to see maybe a count of 2 reservations arriving with the booking.com rate, 2 for the Expedia Hotel Collect rate, and a count of 3 for the Expedia prepaid rate. So it's always good to take a look at the resulting report to make sure that it looks appropriate. Of course, we can go back and repeat step number 3 to then make it a little bit easier to read. Great. Let me just close that report. We're going to go and make those adjustments from the report wizard here in the reports menu. Just expand my list and take a look at the booking.com and Expedia arrivals report. And instead of creating new or running the report, I'm going to click modify. Now, one of the things I wanted to do was to add a count instead of a sum. So I'm going to select show counter from this report tab. And I'm going to skip ahead using the next button all the way to the columns tab. And this is where I can adjust those column widths. So for example, here I might want to change the rate name. We'll make that column wider so that it doesn't cut off the rate name. I might do the same for the card holder name and the reservation status. Great. The other thing that I want to do is remove that sum. I don't need to see the sum of the rate. I just wanted to see the count, so I can remove that here. Of course, you can also make any of those adjustments to your group by or order by if you'd like to. Once you're finished with your modifications, you go ahead and click Finish. And from the report wizard, you can actually run this report again. You can select the report and click Run. That will give me my prompts once again. So my date from, let's look at the same date range from today's date to the end of October, October 31st. Great. So now I've made those adjustments. We can see that it has expanded my report a little bit more. It makes it a little bit easier to see. So I've got my booking.com rate and I've got 2 records counted, and a total of 3 there. So in total, in between today and the end of the month, I should expect 7 reservations for my booking.com and Expedia arrivals. Great. Excellent. So let me just exit out of here and head back to our presentation. So that is a bit of an overview of how to create custom report based off of reservations. Now there's tons of reservation filters that you can use, as well as a bunch of different types, ways that you can combine those filters to combine those fields to create your filters. So that is just an example, but we do have some more examples available on our support website. Now let's take a look at how to create those custom reports, but based off of transactions. So similar to the reports based off of reservations, we're going to follow 3 steps, the exact same 3 steps, but with a little bit of a difference whenever we come to the available fields and filters, step number 2. So this report that we're going to create in these 3 steps is an example of a transaction usage report. We're going to see, we're going to be able to look at a date range and see how many times a transaction code was used within that date range. So step number 1 is to create the report and header information. You're going to start from the report wizard and click the New button. In the report field name, we're going to enter in the name. This is the transaction code usage report. And we're going to select the based on field. You're going to change this to transactions because we want to have access to transactional fields. You're going to show this in the menu. So that's a drop-down menu of custom reports. And I'm going to add in a description, just giving a little more information about how this report is used. I'll click the Next button, and I'm going to add that title back in, the transaction code usage report. And for this header, I'm going to build a little more information into it. So I'll select the property variable, click Insert. And then on the second line, I want to add address information. So from that system variable, I'll select Address, Insert. And then on the third line, I want to add the city, state, and zip code. So you can do that all in one line, just entering in those variables and adding a comma and space in between them so that they generate all on one line. It is optional, but it can be added to add a little more information to your reporting there. Great. So the next step, we're going to now select fields and add the filters based off of those selected fields. Now, because we're looking at transactions within a date range, I want to make sure that I'm selecting the transaction code date, the date that the transaction code was posted or recorded in RoomKey, and I'm going to use that date to build a filter based off of a date range, so date from and date to. We'll also add in some additional filter fields to allow us to specify what transaction code information we want to look at using this report, as well as the details of that transaction, things like when it was posted, who posted it, maybe where it was posted, like a res ID or reservation ID, just so that we can clearly see that information on the resulting report. So heading over to our Fields tab, I'll click the Next button. You'll notice that my list of available fields is a lot shorter with transaction-based reporting. Um, I just have access to transaction fields and reservation fields. So starting with my transaction fields, I want to start with the transaction date, my transaction code, that's what I'm going to be using for my filters, and the additional information I want to see on that report, including the transaction name. I also want to see the transaction amount, how much, what the price was for that transaction, as well as any reservation ID, so where that transaction was posted. And I also want to see the clerk that posted that or created that transaction. From the reservation section, I would also recommend adding in the status of the reservation. This can be helpful information on the resulting report. So I'm just going to scroll down to the bottom here and select status within that reservation field. Once you've added all your fields, you can now select Next, move over to building the filter. So the first thing I want to do is build the filter expression off of the transaction date. I'm going to use that parameter and prompt using date from, select OK, and I want to add the transaction date expression date to. So also be a parameter and a prompt to the user to select a date to, so to bookend that date range. The last thing I want to do is also add in a prompt to the user to specify what code or transaction code they're looking at. So I'll select and transaction code and expression, and I'll use the like expression to select a parameter and prompt the user to enter the code or specify what code they want to see. Once you've added in your filter expressions, that is all that is needed for that filter tab. Great. So when you're building custom reports based off of transactions, it is a lot less data that you have access to in the Fields tab, and the filters tend to be a little more straightforward. So the filter was less complex than the reservations filter that we built previously. Now let's wrap up the building of this transaction-based report with step number 3. We're going to customize the columns, group by, and order by features. So to move on to the columns tab, I'll select the Next button. This is now going to give me access to those columns, and I can format them or organize them as needed. So This one, I want to move the res ID up to the beginning of the report, closer to the top. So for the transaction date, I'm just going to simplify this title as date. Transaction code, I'm going to simplify that to code, and transaction name, I'm just going to call this name. As far as formatting goes, I want to make sure that I'm formatting my date and amount fields, make those standard or however I prefer to see those. And I'm also going to add a sum for the amount field. The transaction date column, I'm actually going to hide this from the resulting report. I'm actually going to end up grouping my report by transaction date. So when I click the next button, I can move over to the group by tab and select tran date or transaction date. Lastly, I'm going to click the next button. Now, as an option, you may want to choose an order, sort by order, but for this report, I'm actually not going to add that in. It's totally optional, and I'm going to choose to omit it and just click Finish for this custom report. Now you can see my custom report appears in my list of, in my report wizard. Great. So that's a custom report based off of transactions. Let me go ahead and open up our test database and we can see what this report looks like. So once again, I'm going to go to my reports menu. This time I'm going to access my custom reports in the general section and select transaction code usage. Now I want to see all of the charges that I've posted so far this month, in the month of October, for flower bouquets. So I want to see what I've charged, where I've charged them, how much revenue I've charged so far for flowers. I'm going to use the date range starting from October 1st to today's date. And then I'm going to enter the code for flower bouquets. Now you do need to know what codes you're using. In this case, I know that my code is flower. When I click OK, that's now going to generate the report for me. Let me just zoom in here to make it a little easier to see. So just like we saw with the previous example, we've got the title information, name of the hotel. This time I added in more address information, just as an example at the top there, and the name of the report, transaction code usage. The other thing that I can see here are my filter conditions, so I can see exactly how this filter or how this report was generated based off of a date range from the beginning of October through to today's date. And then it's also based off of a transaction code, and I specified the transaction code flower in order to see all the times that I've charged for a flower bouquet to my guests. Now I group this report by date or transaction date, so the date that the transaction was posted. I can see that I posted charges for flower bouquet once on the 15th, and I have 2 postings for flower bouquets on the 16th. Now, using that sum column, I can also see the total amount for each of those groupings. So a total of $75 on the 15th, a total of $350 on the 16th, and in total so far, I've charged $425 for flowers in the month of October, month to date. Another couple of handy things that I can see here, I can see the res ID. Many properties may also add in the guest name, so the name on the reservation, where that posting was made. And of course, I can see who posted that. This is recorded under my admin RSI clerk ID. I can also see the status of the reservation. In this case, because we're posting charges, these are being posted to in-house guests. Right. Now, the nice thing with this transaction code usage report is that I've based it off of a variable code. So I can see how many charges I've allocated for flowers, but I can also use this for payment codes or tax codes as well. So if I want to see how many Visa payments I've recorded so far, I can use this same report from the custom report section, transaction code usage. And if I want to see how many Visa transactions I've recorded so far this month, I can simply enter the code Visa or whatever your Visa credit card code is, click OK, and that will now generate a Visa code usage report. So when you build these transaction code reports or reports based off of transactions and you have a customizable variable like the code field, it makes it very easy to use the same report to generate different types of results. So here, again, I can see I've got different transactions recorded for Visa payments. That just helps out. This might be very helpful for any sort of credit card reconciliation. If I want to do one credit card type at a time, that can be very helpful. One thing that you will notice whenever you are building reports off of transactional data, it does not forecast any future transactions. So right now I'm looking at transactions that have already been posted in the past or current date. It will not show me any forecasted transactions or revenue forecasting. This is based off of date ranges that are of the current date or past dates. Great. So just heading back to our presentation here, that gives another example of how to create or build a different type of custom report. This one was built off of transactions data, transactional data there. Now let's take a look at some frequently asked questions that we get into our support team and training team regarding the report wizard. One of the first questions that we typically get is, how does the filter work? I did show a couple of examples in our demonstration already, but I wanted to take a moment to kind of break down how this filtering tool works between the filter expressions and the report expressions. So when you're building the filter, you'll notice that I was using these buttons that appear in the center of that module. The buttons that we have available are expression, and then I have bracketed buttons, and then I have the options or, not, and. In most cases, you'll be building, you'll be using the expression button and the and button to add in those parameters. So when you are building a filter that prompts the user to select a date range, so date from and date to. We use the expression button to create the date from. You click and then expression to build the date to. Now, these filter expressions, and when we're selecting date from and date to, we use these in conjunction with the Boolean expressions off to the right-hand side. Now, when you click the expression button, you do not see the words written on the right-hand side. Instead, you see these symbols in bold. Sometimes that can be a little bit difficult to understand. So I've just written out their meaning off to the right-hand side. So the equal symbol means that the expression you are building is equal to something. We have does not equal, that's the two back-to-back arrows here. Now, the one that I like to use whenever you're building a date range expression is the greater than or equal to and less than or equal to. So when you're building a date range, you would click expression, date, greater than or equal to, and that would be your date from. Then when you build the second part of the expression, you'll click and expression less than or equal to, and that will be your date to. So we saw that date range example, date from and date to in both of our example reports so far. Now you can use greater than or less than, but the difference between greater than or equal to and greater than is that it will not equal the date selected. So if it is a date that you're selecting, if I was to want to see um, data from October 1st, but not include the first, so that means that it'll be from the second onward, you would use greater than. That can be a little bit complicated when you're working with dates, but if you're looking at creating a report um, and you want to see values, maybe a transaction report that shows any transactions that are posted over $1,000, you can use the greater than symbol in that case. You would create an expression based off of the transaction amount greater than $1,000. So it will not include $1,000, but it will include $1,000.01. So anything greater than $1,000. The last type of expression we have here is null. This one always confused me at the very beginning, but this means that the field is empty. So this can be leveraged if you are looking to find any missing data. If you're creating a report, for example, an arrivals report, and it's your hotel policy to pre-assign room numbers, you could build a report that shows any uh, expression of a room number that is null, meaning the field is empty, meaning that the room number is missing or room number assignment is missing from that arrival reservation. So that can be really helpful. Like I said, if your policy is to always pre-assign room numbers for your arrivals, you could create that custom report and identify if you have any arrivals upcoming that are missing a room number because the field is empty. Yeah. We do have lots of examples. We have about 7 different examples so far of some custom reports available from our support website that use different variations of these filter expressions and Boolean expressions. Um, Again, the possibilities are vast for the different combinations of these expressions that you can use to create your custom reports in the report wizard. So another frequently asked question that we get often is, what do the fields mean? When we're looking at the fields that are available to build your filter, they are based off of um, different data points available inside RoomKey. And sometimes they are straightforward, for example, transaction code or arrival date, departure date, but sometimes they're not as straightforward. So what I've done is in our support website, I've actually created a brand new support article called Fields in the Report Wizard. And this actually lists off all of the fields that are available in the report wizard, and it gives a definition for each of those fields. Now this is available from our support website, so that's support.roomkeypms.com. Let me just pull up our support website and show you where you can find this. Of course, you can do a keyword search. You can look for fields in the report wizard or report wizard fields using our keyword search at the top. Or you can find it in the just the basics sections. It's found in the reports and reporting tools manual. You'll see the report wizard section here, and this new article is called Fields in the Report Wizard. So like I said, this will go through a list of all the different fields. We have a table of contents here to make it a little easier. So if you want to see, let's see what type of fields are available when you create a report based off of reservations, and you want to see what type of guest fields are available there. We've got the field name listed on the left-hand side and a description. of that field and where it can be found. I've gone ahead and also added in information specifically for the different sections. So when you're looking at reservations or reports based off of reservations, that data can appear in a bunch of different areas. So if you'd like to see where that information appears inside RoomKey, you can click on this drop down, and that will actually give you a screenshot of where you can find this information. So for example, any guest info is going to be found on the guest info tab of the reservation. So things like guest name, contact details, payment method, or telephone information. You'll also find second address information here. I've also shown an example of where you can find this information, guest information on the guest profile module. So it's found in the main guest info, extra info, or credit card tab here in the guest profile. So that is available when these fields are found outside or in specific areas inside RoomKey. Let me just scroll back up here. Um, Couple more features here. Like I said, this is based off of the um, different types of reports that you can create. So reports based off of reservations or based off of transactions. If you're heading down to the types of transaction fields that you can pull, that'll show down here as well. Great. Um, Last feature that is available when you are using this fields in the report wizard support article is that if you're using a browser, obviously, to access this available on our support website, you can do a search or find feature using your browser functions. So with my browser is Internet Explorer, I can use the Control F key to find a specific term. If you want to find a term like source, that'll allow me to search for the term source and I can see what that field means. So I've got source as a field there, or maybe source of business field as well. So hopefully that helps out with your searches and as you are building your custom reports and figuring out what those fields mean as you're going through the report wizard there. Great. So the last thing I want to touch base on is when you can start using this tool. Our Report Wizard tool comes standard with all RoomKeep databases, so you can go ahead and get started right away. Just a reminder, if you have certain user roles, you will need to enable your property and clerk permissions based off of what we reviewed at the beginning of our presentation here. Now, if you are feeling overwhelmed or you want to maybe have more one-on-one training regarding the report wizard, or if you want us explore the possibility of creating a custom report for you, you can contact our inside sales team. Margot will be able to review your requirements, maybe discuss a couple of options for one-on-one training or custom report building, and you can contact her with her email address on file or on the screen here. Great. So to summarize our presentation today, we talked about what is the report wizard, how to access it, where it can be found. We looked at some examples of reports based on reservations and reports based on transactions. Then we went through a couple of frequently asked questions with regards to the report wizard. So I'm going to open up the floor and see if there's any outstanding questions. So if you do have any outstanding questions, you can go ahead and click the Q&A button on the webinar meeting. That'll allow you to type in a question. I can answer it live. Or if there are no outstanding questions, I'm just going to wait a couple more minutes just to see if there's any other questions. Oh, awesome. We've got a question from Scarlett asking, how can I create a report that will give me any guest staying over 3 nights? Great. Um, so right off the bat, I'm thinking that this might have to be a reservations-based report. So in the reports menu, um, when you're building that report in the report wizard here, you'll want to make sure that that is based on reservations. When you're looking at the fields, the different fields that you want to pull over, one thing to be mindful of is considering a date range. So you might want to look at creating your filter around reservations arriving in the future or looking at reservations that arrived in the past. So I do recommend that from the reservation section here that you'll have the arrival date selected as one of your fields. The other thing that you would want to use because you want to look at reservations staying over 3 nights, the number of nights field is what you'll also want to grab here from the reservations list of available fields. Then you can use those fields and any other additional pieces of information to build your filter. So your expression is going to start with that date from and date to. So you'll do expression date from and expression date to, and then you are going to use and to then select number of nights greater than 3, greater than or equal to 3. Um, if you would like to see what other filters are available, again, definitely check out our support website to see what those different filters values are, and hopefully that'll help you build out that type of report here in the report wizard. Great. We got another question, this one from Samantha. If we were going to try to create a VIP-based report, what fields would we enter to cover all guest reservations in a set period, not just known dates where the VIP section is true? Okay. Um, one thing to note when you are looking at a date range, um, primarily we're looking at by arrival date. Um, if you are looking to see, let's say, or capture information, let's say we wanted to see all in-house reservations in October that are VIP, but if the guest arrived in September and they're staying through October, it would not be captured within that arrival date from and date to date range. Can be a little bit tricky to build those types of reports. Um, so, uh, Roomkey would not be able to predict that the reservation would have arrived and would be in-house during October because that date range, their arrival date falls outside of the specified date range. So that would be a limitation of those types of reports. Um, When you are building a VIP report, I actually have an example here. We do have an example of that takes you through how to build a VIP arrivals report where you can see VIPs that are arriving on a specific day. Um, this arrivals report can be customized to show instead of if the reservation is arriving on a specific day, you can do a date um, greater than or equal to. So let me show you how that can be modified on this filter here. I'm just going to click modify. I'm going to jump ahead to the filter. Now, the filter in this example, it says select arrival date, and this is equals select arrival date. Instead of using equals, what you can do when you're building this filter expression, you'd select arrival date, click expression, and then you'd use the greater than or equal to. Then you'd use the parameter and say select arrival date. And then that would prompt the user to select arrival date. It will show you all arrivals from that date into the future. So if I was to select if I was to select September 1st, it would show me all of my VIPs arriving from September, October, November, all the way into the future. So that could be one way that you could modify the way that that custom report is built. Instead of using the equals, you would use greater than or equal to. When you're using the VIP selection, this is an interesting field because VIP is a yes or no or positive or negative switch. So when you're building that report, or when you're building that variable, when you want to tell RoomKey you want to see all reservations with a guest marked as a VIP, you're going to use the guest field VIP. The expression you want to build is equal to a value. Now, with the Boolean expression, you can use the value 1 to express a positive value, or you can use the expression uh, using the letter Y or yes, because that indicates that the VIP checkbox on the guest profile is selected or is enabled or marked as yes. So you can use the value Y or you can use the value 1. Both of those will work. I believe the example report that we have on our support website uses 1 as the value there. I did go into that bit of explanation when building the fields report here. Let me just do a filter and look for VIP. Great. So this value indicates if the VIP checkbox has been selected on the guest profile attached to the reservation. So if the guest is marked as a VIP, the value Y will appear. If the guest does not have that checkbox marked on their guest profile, the letter N indicates that that is not a VIP. So hopefully those suggestions help out with building those types of VIP reports and some of the limitations to be aware of whenever you're building reporting for reservations. Great. So it looks like we've answered all outstanding questions. Thank you so much to everyone for joining in and participating today. I really appreciate these questions. If you do have anything left over, feel free to ask your questions in the follow-up survey as soon as we end our meeting here. I hope you have a great day and enjoy the rest of your week.